hello and let me know that you're here. Again, we're going to get started. My name is Lori and I'm from Women's Health on the Go. Tonight we're going to talk about birth control and are they safe for us to talk. Women's Health on the Go, we provide video consultations for women, and we offer conventional treatments and we also offer alternative treatments. So make sure you go over to our website, Women's Health on the Go. Check us out. If you haven't signed up for our newsletter, then make sure that you do. You get this cool How to Avoid the Gynecologist ebook, which I think is really, really great. And I'm about to think I'm going to be doing another one pretty soon. I want to talk about, I think I'm going to do a little bit about with essential oils, like top 5 essential oils that all women should have in the home. I think that would be absolutely fabulous. So let's get started, talk about birth control and are they safe for us to take. Now, the reason why I want to talk about this is that when I have patients, I still work in a clinic. And throughout my career, I always found that a lot of people would start birth control and their provider might not talk to them about all the possible side effects and interactions and what they have to do. And I think that it's really, really important because there is this misconception that, as the years have gone by, birth control pills are a lot safer. And that is not necessarily true. Especially, we're going to talk a little bit about, so when you think about birth control pills, okay, birth control pills have both estrogen and progesterone in them. Now, estrogen is estrogen. There's not different kinds of estrogen. Maybe in your birth control, you'll have different dosages of the birth control, the dosage of the milligrams, but it's the same. There's no difference. But there are different progesterones that are out there. There's norgestimate, there is levonorgestrel, there's a whole bunch of different ones. And there's ones that have been around for a long time. And although those ones do have side effects, the newer generation, they call them the second generation, actually are a little bit more dangerous. And, we're going to talk about, those are birth controls like Yaz and Yasmin, and what's being used in Mirena, and what's being used, which is the IUD, and the patch. I don't know if anybody's ever used the patch. So these dangers are really out there. When we talk about birth control pills, we're going to talk a little bit mostly about birth control pills, but some of these just kind of, when it comes to birth control, they're all basically the same thing, except for they're delivered differently, okay? Mirena has progesterone in it, and it's a device that goes inside the uterus. Depo-Provera, now, the only thing that has a combination, we're going to talk about, so there's combination birth control, which have progesterone and estrogen, and then there's the ones that have just progesterone only. So you get the progesterone only, which is like the Mirena, the Depo-Provera, there's the Nexplanon, which is the thing that goes inside the arm, and there is actually a birth control that is called a mini pill. And then you have combination, which is estrogen and progesterone, and that is things like birth control pills, the NuvaRing, the patch. But when we're talking about this, we're going to talk a little bit more about birth control pills, but some of these things can kind of go right over into those other types of birth control because we're talking about, when we're talking about some of this stuff, we're going to be talking about the progesterone and the risks that are linked to that. Now, if you take birth control, it'd be a good idea to whip out your birth control pack, okay? Because a lot of times all pharmaceuticals have a brand name. When it comes to birth control, people know Yaz or Yasmin. They know ortho products, which are Ortho-Neo, which are Ortho-Evra, Orthocept, Orthonovum. There's a whole bunch of different orthotricycline low. There's Sprintec, which is a kind of generic form of that. But those are like the pretty names. And then you have the generic kind of names, which it talks about estradiol and norgestimate, estradiol and, well, that's more like the chemical name, I'm sorry, estradiol and levonorgestrel. And it's that those second generation ones, right? So Yaz and Yasmin are one that could be, there's a lot of people who've had a lot of problems with those birth controls. That, and I'm probably going to screw up the chemical name of it because they're always so hard to do. Drospirenone, okay? Now, when it comes to Yaz and Yasmin, there have been so many lawsuits of people who have had, young women who have had heart attacks, stroke, young women who have died taking these birth control, okay? Because when you take birth control, you always have a risk of a blood clot, a stroke, a cardiac event. You have risk of gallbladder disease. These are things that can really, really happen. Your risk of breast cancer, of cancer, is increased as well, and we're going to kind of talk about that. But when it comes to this, Yaz and Yasmin, I think it's really kind of important. I want people to break out your birth control packet and see what the name is, see what those chemical components are of it, and really think about, oh, do I really, really want to be taking this birth control, and maybe switching it to something different that has less risks. The risks are still going to be there, but are less likely. When it comes to the Yaz and Yasmin, when I'm sure that there's still more lawsuits that keep coming and coming, but when they did this research and article about it, there was like 13,000 lawsuits, and the pharmaceutical companies paid out millions and millions of dollars to people to pay for what have happened to those women. Some of them have died young, very young women that have died from having a heart attack or having a stroke from basically taking these birth control. And the problem is that despite the fact that there is significant, to me, findings that saying that these birth control pills can be very dangerous, they are still sold today. 200 million women are still taking Yaz and Yasmin around the world, okay? That's a lot of people. And, when it comes to pharmaceuticals is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And I like to educate everybody as much as I can about the pharmaceutical. And don't get me wrong. Especially when we're talking about birth control. Birth control is important. A lot of us, don't want to have kids right now. And we need something that's going to help us prevent us from getting pregnant. But, also we have to look at these risks because they could be deadly. They can absolutely be deadly. And you could be someone who's young and you're taking the birth control pills, and it can happen within a month. Sometimes these people that have died, they've only been started taking them. And another thing to think about is people who are taking birth control pills for things that are not contraception, okay? People take it for regulating their hormones. If they have what we call PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, which really birth control pills are not the best thing to be doing. It's just masking the symptoms. Acne is a huge thing. Yaz and Yasmin actually kind of advert that, it's going to help with your acne. There was also orthotricycline, because they just did the research. They did the research so that they can say, hey, this is going to take care of your acne. And when you're a teenager and you see something that's going to take care of your acne, you're going to jump on that. And the thing is that a lot of people are taking this, but they don't even use it for birth control, but they're putting themselves at risk. So that's for Yasmin and Yasmin, right? For those second generation. And also there's been levonorgestrel is another progesterone that a lot of the research comes out that there's like kind of higher risks with that kind of progesterone. But we're going to go into now, this is overall risk for everybody. Of course, like I said, when it comes to those second generation progesterones, they're a little bit at a higher risk, such as the drospirenone, which I'm in the medical field, and I will be always the first one to say I'm not good at pronouncing these medical words like this sometimes. Okay, so let's look at the cancer risk. Okay, now when we look at birth control pills, there's different kinds of research that we want to look at. Okay, and yes, there is research to show that birth control pills will help lower your risk for uterine and ovarian cancer, but it's going to increase your risk of breast cancer. Okay, and the reason being is that when during our cycle, right, if we're not taking birth control, our hormones fluctuate throughout the cycle. But when we're taking birth control pills, we're at a constant, we're either at a constant rate. I mean, sometimes the levels fluctuate, but they even go higher. So you're being exposed more and more to more synthetic estrogen. And as we know, breast cancer, there's breast cancers that are estrogen dependent. Okay, and even the UN, which is the United Nations, they have this United Nations International Agency for Research on Cancer. Okay, they have actually grouped not only birth control pills, but hormone replacement therapy in what they call Group 1, a carcinogen. A carcinogen is something that is likely to cause cancer. And they do talk about how, it lowers your risk for uterine and ovarian cancer. But when you look at the incidence of breast cancer versus the incidence of uterine and ovarian cancer, there's a lot more people with breast cancer that are getting breast cancer for multiple reasons. We're not going to go into breast cancer per se and all the kind of risks, but let's think about this. Let's think about what we're exposing our bodies to and, down the road, what we're going to be potentially medically ending up with, okay? So breast cancer is one of them, okay? To me, that's important. Even hormone replacement therapy. I know there's lots of debatable, there's always this debate, there's some research companies that say, and I'll say research companies because it really depends. When you're looking at research, make sure you look at who's funding that research. That is really, really important because a lot of the times it's pharmaceutical companies, and of course they're going to find things that are beneficial for them, right? Absolutely. Hi Nancy, hi Fiona, how are you guys? I hope you guys are doing good. We're going on to now gallbladder disease. So when we take birth control or any kind of hormone replacement therapy, we're also putting our risks, one of the risks is gallbladder disease. So it's one thing also to, think about. It may be not as bad as breast cancer, but I definitely think that it's something to think about. Another thing is, and I think that this is really important, this part, because over my years of seeing women taking birth control and seeing the changes that they have with depression, mood swings, loss of libido, that's really significant. Those are really significant things that are happening because, okay, I just got into a relationship and I'm so excited and me and my man, we want to start having sex, but we really don't want to use a condom because we want to be just between the two of us. So I'm going to go put myself on birth control pills because then I don't have to worry about using condoms. All right, now I've got birth control pills. I'm depressed. I don't even want to have sex. My mood is fluctuating up and down and my relationship's going down the toilet. And I don't understand because I don't realize that it's the birth control pills that are causing this. A lot of people don't realize that birth control pills can affect our mood. I had a patient, and you know what? This is not the only patient this happened to, but I had a patient. I'll never forget. She came, and I've been seeing her for a couple of years, and she came for her annual, and I said, "Oh, do you want to refill on your birth control pills?" And she goes, "Oh no, let me tell you what happened." She goes, I ran out of prescription. I wasn't able to get here on time, so I went off the birth control pills. And my boyfriend looked at me and went to me, "There's the girl I started going out with. Where has she been all of these years?" He goes, "I don't care. We'll deal with it. You're not going back on them." Typical, just like a scenario I said. Started going out. Everything was going great. She went on birth control pills. so that they, can, not use condoms and be a little bit more, spontaneous and all that kind of stuff. And he completely saw a different person. And they never even really kind of realized it until she went off of the birth control pills. And all of a sudden, and she even said, she goes, and I feel better. I feel alive again. I know my libido. Oh my God, I want to have sex all the time now. And women don't realize that, when you go to a provider and you get put on this stuff, does your provider say, well, this can actually cause decreased libido. It can cause you to have mood swings, maybe some depression. Most of the time, when you are on birth control pills, you go to your provider and say, I'm depressed. What does he do? He writes another prescription. Here is antidepressant. When really, it's just the birth control pills. Okay? And I think that's really, really important for people to realize, because you're getting in a relationship. You want to be, having fun and, having sex when you want to, and you want to have an increased libido and you want to be happy. And now you're taking something that's making you miserable? Anyway, but I know that it's important. I'm just trying to open up everybody's mind. I know birth control is very important to people. I realize that it's easy, it's simple, and it's what we have. But my job, to me, is to open up your mind to just think outside the box and to think that these birth control pills can actually be causing these kind of things. Okay, so, and also about the decreased libido. That is definitely, without a doubt. I have patients come to me and like, oh my God, ever since I've been on these birth control pills, I don't want to have sex anymore. And you know what I say to them? It's working. See, now you're not having sex, so you can't get pregnant. So, and there actually is research showing that it'll decrease your libido, but unfortunately, even if you stop taking the pills today, it may last a little bit longer. It may stay in your system, and it may stay in your system for a couple of more months. So that is a possibility that can happen. I can personally tell you that I used to be on birth control pills. I was on pills for like a long time, I think like 10 years. And I was, at the point I was not in a relationship, I wasn't having sex or anything like that. So I'm like, I'm just getting rid of these things. Oh my God. All of a sudden I was like, and now I want to have sex. What's going on with me? And I was like, oh my God, the birth control pills have been, so it's even happened to me. So I can even say, I totally understand because it's happened to me. Okay, so now this is the most interesting research that I found. At least, I love this. I love research. If you ever watch my shows, I'm always reading research and always finding something. I always want to know what's going on. And this just kind of ties in. I'm going to go a little bit off to the side, and I'm going to explain that we don't realize that our bodies are doing so many things throughout the cycle. You might not realize, but there was a couple of researches that I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to talk about this research that was done with birth control pills. One research was looking at, do women act different throughout their cycle? And so what they did is they went to a club and they put them like in front of this, some kind of screen, and they, figured out when their cycle was, where they were on their cycle, and said, okay, just go dance. I mean, they're at a club, they're there, they're dancing, they're having a good time. Do you know that the women that were ovulating had more sexual moves than women in other parts of their cycle? Because you know what your body's trying to do? As I tell my patients all the time, no matter whether you want to get pregnant or not, your body's trying to get pregnant. And your body's dancing even sexier now because you're trying to go out there and find yourself a man to impregnate you. You might not want to get pregnant. You might not think that that's what's, but your body is actually doing that. I mean, it's amazing. And not only that, this is one of the other reasons why there's another research. And there's another reason why I tell people, like, using these feminine sprays, ocean breeze, summer meadow, whatever the heck they are. Don't do it. Do you realize that, again, during your cycle, you are actually emitting a smell, a certain smell, right, from you, from your private parts, to attract a man. You don't realize it. They did this. I mean, this is crazy research if you ask me, but they actually had, I don't know how they did this. I don't know. I mean, I saw it on TV and they had these little masks over their face, but I don't know how they exactly did it. But they did research on men smelling women's odors throughout the cycle. And they found that men were more attracted to the scent that was during ovulation. So you are giving off. You're not only moving it, but you're also giving off an odor to attract someone. I mean, come on, women. How amazing are our bodies that we don't even realize, and they're doing this. It's just doing it on its own. To me, see, this is why I'm a women's health nurse practitioner. This is why I love women's health. I think that the women's body is so amazing. Amazing that it's actually doing that. Another thing, well, this is another research. This has nothing to do with it, but I'm going to say one more research because I think this stuff is cool. They also took men and they put them on like a treadmill and got them all sweaty and gross. And then they took their t-shirts and they put them in these glass containers. And what they did is they had like a whole bunch of them, but some of the guys, their sisters were involved in the research. So they didn't know whose sweat was there or whatever, and they're smelling each of the sweat of all the men. And do you know that the girls, like the sisters, were so put off by their brother's body odor, but attracted to other people? I mean, how amazing is that? How amazing are our bodies? Let's now go back to birth control. Birth control. Do you realize that birth control pills actually alter, how do we put it? Alter your ability to pick your mate? How crazy is this? Okay? I mean, to me, this is the most interesting part of all this research here. Okay? It's basically saying that, because you're, as I was saying before, like all these hormones, you don't realize it, but your hormones are driven to find that mate. Okay? And they find that people who are heterosexual and they're taking birth control pills and they're trying to find a man, when they're taking birth control pills, they actually end up finding men with more feminine characteristics, right? And it alters the way that they pick a man. Not to say that guys with feminine aspects are not great, because they are, but what they found is that women who were taking birth control pills and found those kind of mates were later more unsatisfied with their relationships. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. I think that's just, again, I don't know, I just think that our bodies are completely amazing. So our natural hormones are really finding someone that we really want to kind of, I guess, be with. I guess that's what we'll talk about it, right? But when you take birth control pills, now you're taking synthetic hormones. You're taking synthetic hormones, so your body is like, who am I? You're not actually being attracted to who you truly are attracted to. That's from what I get from that research, which I think crazy. Another thing that is, now this ties into, I would say, almost every talk that I have about our, I'm always talking about our gut health, nutrition, all these kind of things, relieving stress, all these kind of things. Well, birth control pills actually alter our gut health. Now, there's lots of research and a lot of people that are talking about gut health and how it's really important, and I'm sure you've heard leaky gut syndrome and how there's all this good bacteria in our intestines, and it keeps everything status quo. And when we have an alteration in that biome in our guts, then that can cause lots of things, okay? It's responsible. We're not even talk about all that kind of stuff, but it can also, birth control pills can alter our microbiome in our gut, and it can actually, okay, there are certain cells inside of our intestines that like estrogen, okay? And when you take birth control pills, obviously, there is estrogen going through our bodies, okay? And when that happens, there's also a, what is the word I want to look for? A trickle-down effect, okay? And yeast will go off of estrogen, and then you have an overgrowth of yeast. Lots of women, when they go on birth control pills, are more likely to have vaginal infections, yeast infections, and bacterial infections. And one of them is because if you have this overgrowth of yeast. Now, overgrowth of yeast in the vagina, of course, I mean, if you've had a yeast infection, you know all about it. But overgrowth of yeast in our guts, and if you have that leaky gut going out into our other parts of our body, can cause a lot of medical and health issues. You know, when we look at lots of different, I'm trying to think of the word because I just think that there's so many things that are going on in our body that can cause, problems. Like, I've talked about medical cannabis and the endocannabinoid system. If that endocannabinoid system is not working, then we can have health problems. If you have a gut, then it doesn't have really lots of good bacteria in there and your microbiome is all messed up, then it can leak out and you can have lots of medical problems. So there's lots of, if you're really stressed out and your cortisol levels are not correct, it can trickle down and you can have lots of medical problems. So there's lots of different things that are going on in our body that can cause us to have health issues, and one of them is that gut microbiome, and birth control pills can alter that and cause you to have issues as well. Hopefully that kind of made sense. So these are things that I think are really important for us to realize when it comes to birth control, okay? And I'm not saying that stop your birth control, because I know that may be a hard thing for you to do. What I want to say is that I just want to open up your mind to know that lots of times when we go to a provider, they might not necessarily tell us all of these things. They might not know all of these things. And I think when we're taking birth control pills, because a lot of times when we're taking birth control pills, we're taking them for a long time. It's not like I have a cold. I'm going to take it for 7 days. If I'm in a long-term monogamous relationship and I don't want to get pregnant for the next 5, 6, 7, 8 years, I could potentially be taking that birth control for a very long time. And I can say personally, as a medical provider, when I went to school and we were talking about the long-term effects of birth control, they would be like, don't worry about it. There's no long-term effects. There are. There really, really are. There's also people who also go off of birth control and they get what we call birth control-induced PCOS. After they go off of the birth control, they're not functioning correctly, because their body has been synthetically taking hormones, and now the body doesn't know how to function on its own. How does it go back to that? I mean, there's definitely ways that we can naturally kind of take care of that, but these things are not really discussed. A lot of the times, like I said, you've been on birth control pills and now you're depressed. You go to your doctor. What does he do? Writes you a script for an antidepressant medication, and there you go. We as women, we need to open our eyes and open our hearts and know everything. And after, if I talk about all this stuff and you go, you know what, like, listen, Lori, birth control pills are still just like, I really want to keep taking them, then, that's fine. We're all unique and we all have our choices that we want to take. And I think that is fabulous. But to me, I think that we should be being informed about everything possible. Now, what does a girl to do if she doesn't want to do those things? She wants to say, hey, listen, Lori, I hear what you're saying, and, now I want to, I don't want to do that. And, I don't want to do any kind of hormone stuff. And even, there's, I didn't really go into the copper IUD, but there is some research that talks about, there's an IUD that's out there that's non-hormonal, and it's got copper on it, and it's a very small amount of copper. I mean, the IUD is, we do have an IUD here. It's a purple one. It's not exactly, but I mean, if you just like look, an IUD is really not that big. And when you have a copper one, I mean, the copper is just right here, and then you actually have a band here and a tiny band that are on the arms, okay? So it's not a lot of copper. But there has been some research about, people who have copper IUDs, how much is getting into their system, and there's a little bit too much of it, and there's other kind of medical risks that are associated with that. So, as much as it's non-hormonal, is it the best choice for us? Which I could probably do a show on copper IUDs as well. So the other option to do, which takes a little bit kind of more work, and I'm not going to really go really heavy into it, this could probably actually be a show in itself, is either what we call FAM, Fertility Awareness Method, or natural family planning. Now these are both kind of methods where you are taught how to figure out when you're ovulating. With all these different kind of, there's temperature, there's discharge, there's you going out to a disco and dancing a little bit more sexy. There's these kind of signs that you can determine so that either those are the days that you're going to avoid or that you're definitely going to use protection. And research shows that these methods are just as effective as birth control options, with a 99.6% effective rate. Now, I know that most people are not informed of that, and they're not, it's not discussed with people. Like, they're just like, oh, you're gonna, sometimes with my patients, when they come to me and they say they're not doing birth control, no condom, nothing, I would say, so you're doing the pull and pray? You're pulling out and praying that I don't get pregnant? So, when you go to a provider, with some people, when they go to a provider and they tell them that, and they go, oh my God, you got to go on birth control right now. I mean, do you want to get, and they kind of get bullied into it, which, I mean, that's not my method, but, I've seen it. I have seen it and I have heard it. So, there are other kind of options out there. It does take a little bit of work because, you have to take your, temperature every morning. You have to be, being really aware about, your, cervical discharge, and then there's also just doing a self-exam and there's a whole dynamic to it, which we're not going to kind of go into tonight, but, it's pretty darn effective if you use it. 99.6 is pretty darn good. So if you, watch the show and you actually think to yourself, wow, maybe I don't want to take those birth control pills anymore, or any kind of birth control. As I said in the beginning, when you talk about the risks, there's a risk of, you having a blood clot, you having a stroke, you having a heart attack. I mean, those are, it's almost like when you watch those commercials, right? I mean, nowadays those commercials are on there for pharmaceuticals. And what do they say? And side effects can and death, Okay, yes, I'm going to run to my doctor right now and I'm going to get that because, I can possibly die. Which, that's with birth control. I mean, you can, if you have a stroke or you have a heart attack, I mean, young women do die. It still happens today. Is it very often? It's not, but it can absolutely happen. So, and then, just like I told you about the mood, your decreased libido, your choice in maybe your next mate. So these are all things that, to think about. Okay? So I hope that this opened up your mind. I hope that this, I hope it opened up your mind. That's all I would love it to be, is to open up to your mind, to just think about what you're putting into your body, okay? And maybe next week, well, actually next week is 4th of July. So I'm going to take a break. So we're gonna go away for a little 4th of July. So I'm gonna take a week off, and then I think I have scheduled a guest for the following. I've got a couple of guests that are going to be coming up. So I'm very, very excited. I have one on about long-term health and health coaching, and then I have another one on homeopathy, and then I have another one, physical therapy for pelvic health. That is going to be very, very interesting. So thank you so, so much for watching. If you have more questions, if you want to talk more in depth about birth control, then go over onto womenshealthonthego.com and book an appointment with me, and I'd be more than happy to talk about more about birth control, more about your options, more about fertility awareness method if you wanted to. So make sure you go on over there if you want to do that, or just, you know what, check out our website. Make sure that you sign up for our newsletter. There is a great ebook on how to avoid the gynecologist, which, you know, we all need to try to do, kind of take care of ourselves, okay, everybody? So have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Have a great week. Have a safe 4th of July, and I will see you in 2 weeks. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.